They just sent a new release.
It's always a good time to talk Buckeyes football. We appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football with these two, of course, always here, deliver every week. Look at that, 320 consecutive weeks right next to me. Steve Hellwagon of Bucknuts, and of course, Tony Gerdeman. Catch him on BuckeyeHuddle.com. And of course, got to catch the podcast, Buckeye Weekly, folks. Buckeye Weekly. Get there. Gentlemen, how are we doing?
Doing good.
Doing well.
Well, Steve, I'm glad that you let me know just a few seconds ago that NFL great Jim Marshall passed away. I became an NFL fan around 1978, and he was still going strong, pushing 20 seasons at that point, and he was one of the famed Purple People Eaters, of course, and he had the longest consecutive NFL games played streak as a defensive end. And he was one of the first players I ever knew of, and I immediately took to him and the Vikings for a year or two when I first watched the NFL, to the point that my dad took me to my first NFL game in Detroit to see the Vikings in Fran Tarkenton's final season, drove through a blizzard to get to the Silver Dome. And then my dad's like, this is like watching football in your living room. It's 72 degrees in here. And then he had to haul us back through the blizzard again. But great memories there. And again, Jim Marshall, certainly a legend, starting with his Ohio State career.
Yeah, I had forgotten a lot about him, and I agree with all of the sentiments you have, other than going to the Silver Dome in a blizzard, watching him on television there in the late 70s as I was growing up. And they had some really good teams. Obviously, they played in 4 Super Bowls, which is amazing. I'm trying to recollect them. I know that they lost to the Raiders in one of them, probably lost to Miami in one of them, I would think. Maybe, I don't know who else. I don't know who the other ones were against, but
the Chiefs, 1970, Hank Stram and company, Len Dawson, Chiefs, that crew, yep. They were a huge favorite, as that being the final game of the NFL versus the AFL before the merger.
Okay.
And then 4 years later was against the Steelers.
That's right. The one in New Orleans. Yeah, the crappy weather outside New Orleans at Tulane Stadium. Yeah.
I'm skipping over the Dolphins game by 1 year. That was the season before. Played at Rice Stadium in Houston, a Super Bowl.
Wow.
Crazy.
Yeah.
And then, yes, the Raiders game at the Rose Bowl.
Yeah. As I was going back and writing the obit that I just posted on our site, a few hours, probably 15 hours later than I should have last night, but Columbus East High School, which is where Jim Marshall was from, Jim Marshall was from, and I want to say, I'm drawing a blank. There was another outstanding Ohio State offensive lineman from East, and then Woody Hayes recruited him 1956, and it was his freshman year, kind of waiting it out. I printed the what it said about him in the 1957 Ohio State media guide, that he'll start the 57 football season as a third stringer, but could finish as a regular. Yes, he did, and that team went 9-1. And won the Rose Bowl and won the national championship. So he was a national champion at Ohio State, also a track athlete as well, throwing the shot and the discus. Came back in 1958, and against Purdue, they tied Purdue 14-14, and he scored both touchdowns, amazingly. Jim Houston blocked a punt, and Marshall returned it 22 yards for a touchdown. And then in the second quarter, he intercepted a pass and returned it 25 yards for a touchdown. The player I couldn't remember was Bill Willis. He also played at East High School as well. So, in 1959, it's interesting. He opted to head to Canada, where he could get paid to play football instead of coming back to Ohio State for his senior year. He was still put into the Ohio State Athletic Hall of Fame in 78. And then just one of the most decorated pro football careers of all time, set all kinds of records. Sacks were not a stat, but if he'd had if sacks were a stat, he would have had about 130 of them in his career, which would have been the third most in NFL history when he retired. And for some reason, he is not in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He's, over the years, been in different surveys. He's maybe the best player in NFL history who's eligible, who is not in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So the Veterans Committee tried to put him in the last couple of years and came up a little bit short on that. So unfortunate, was not able to go in while he was alive. My guess is in the next year or two, they will rectify that and put him in posthumously, unfortunately. But yeah, just one of the great names in the history of the sport when you think about it. And I can't understand why a guy who has the most consecutive starts, 270, most games played by a defensive player, 282, and he ran the wrong way with a fumble in 1964, got into the end zone, his own team's end zone, when he picked up a fumble, had run it 66 yards, and people who remember the clip will remember he got in the end zone and he took the ball and he flipped it in the air out of bounds, and then one of the 49ers came over and thanked him because it was 2 points as a safety for the 49ers. So just an interesting career, and a guy that was very community-minded in the Twin Cities after his playing days over, known as a great leader and captain as well for the Vikings.
Well, I'll just throw in my 2 cents on why he's not in. Steve, you just said it. What he's known for in my generation is the wrong way run. You said there's no stats. There's, like that is who we knew him as. You saw him on the NFL films and the bloopers. Like he was a blooper. You had to dig deeper to find out that, oh no, this, because I remember when I heard like this was a good player, because forever, he was, after he'd retired, when all of the blooper shows that used to be part of our daily existence, it's like this is what he's known for, running the wrong way. Ha 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 ha. I think that's part of the issue.
Yeah. And you can somewhat understand when you see the play that he kind of circles around and scoops up the ball, that he got kind of turned around and lost his bearings. And then, yeah, as Steve says, it's funny because he hits the end zone and he's so happy he just hoists the ball up in the stands. Yeah, that's what he's known for, first and foremost. But 2 of his teammates along the defensive front that was so famed, the Purple People Eaters, Alan Page and Carl Eller, are in the Hall of Fame. Page was pretty much an automatic choice, and Eller took a long time. So maybe Jim Marshall will be honored as well. Unfortunately, he won't be around to enjoy it. It's always sad when somebody passes, but of course he lived a long and prosperous life. One other note that I could go on forever, but one other, speaking of NFL films, they actually did a fairly long segment, or maybe an entire show, on Jim Marshall's exploits. He was quite the Renaissance man. He was one of these guys that there was no mountain that he wouldn't scale, or river that he wouldn't cross, or whatever was out there to challenge him, he would overcome. So he was quite a guy.
And sometimes it takes death to convince people to put somebody in the Hall of Fame. So we'll see.
Folks, we appreciate you being here. We get together every Wednesday to talk Buckeye football with you, and leave those comments and questions in the chat. This is the best and most effective way to make an impact on the show. We appreciate your super chat contributions. Understand that Steve and Tony have so much going on, and so many other places to be and work to do, and they show up for us every week. So we would appreciate your contributions through the super chat, and otherwise Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App is even more effective. If you want to go that route, just let us know. It's for the Ohio State show. All right, where do we go from here? We've got official visits from last weekend. We've got camps starting this week. Did anybody say anything off of that, Tony?
Well, Mark, can we start off with the big scheduling news first? That
sure.
Ohio State and Youngstown State have agreed to play again in the very near future. So that's good. That's fantastic. That's huge. I believe that is in 2029. That's big time. So yes, no, the bigger news is that they are going to open up against Navy. Ohio State will open against Navy in in 2029. And in order to do that, they had to move their 2029 game against Nevada to 2030. Sorry, everybody. So now that 2029 schedule, the non-conferences, Navy, Charlotte, and Youngstown State. Look forward to it.
They can get a scouting report from Penn State this year. That's their toughest non-conference game against Nevada. They were able to stretch themselves to play Nevada.
Yeah, that is the worst year for Ohio State's scheduling so far in the non-conference, because every other year they've got Texas or Alabama or Georgia. So that's the one year where it's like, well, we don't have anybody. Let's throw in Navy. People can't be too mad about it because what you hate America?
Yeah, they still have that picture at the WAC of one of those, I think it was Navy, where Tressel had both teams come out through the tunnel together, flying the flag and all that. And I think the Navy people were, a little bit, affronted the, hey, we're nobody's charity case, treat us like Michigan or treat us like Penn State. We don't want to be, your pity charity case just because we're, putting our lives on the line for the country. 25-26 is Texas, 27-28 is Alabama, and then 29, as you said, Navy is the primary team, not a Power 5 team, obviously, and then 30-31 is Georgia. So they've got some big-time games coming up, and, they didn't play a Power 5 team this past year. It seemed to work out pretty well for them. Michigan didn't play one the year before when they won the national championship, and that seemed to work out pretty good for them too. So, maybe Penn State this year will pick up that football and run with it. But, I like that they give us this information and we can already make plans for 5 years down the road where we're going to be on, let's see, Saturday, September the 7th or Saturday, September the 14th, 5 years from now, we'll be in Athens, Georgia. So,
you think you can make plans, but I had made plans for the Nevada game, and they have fallen through. I do think we also need to keep in mind that if the SEC and the Big Ten do some sort of a scheduling thing here in the near future, some of these games are going to be thrown out as well.
Could they get disrupted? Yeah.
So there's always that. And anytime there's a scheduling addition or like an agreement or an alliance, if you will, these future games get thrown out anyway, although it's usually the SEC games against Ohio State that are getting thrown out because they're going to 9 conference games, or they had to do this or they had to do that. So I'm not expecting the schedule as it is right now to stay that way. Like, I wonder when the last time they had 6 straight years of no changes. So there'll be more changes coming.
Yeah. The only thing constant in college football is the change.
Tony, help me out. Mm-hmm. End zone interception against Navy. Brian
Roll.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, I have.
I talked to him about that once for a book, and the way he explained it is basically once he intercepted it, like everything went away, and he was almost like watching himself return the 2-point conversion, and that gave them the 4-point win. Like, there was no noise, everything was quiet, and he's just like watching himself return it basically as he stepped in front of the 2-point pass to tie the game at that point in 2009.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I was watching that just thinking, this team is too good. They cannot lose to Navy. That's not going to actually happen.
Yeah, they went on and won the Rose Bowl, that team, 2009.
I tell you what, it's better to open against Navy than to throw them in like week 2 or week 3 or week 4. At least you can prepare for them in camp. That's the only I don't like scheduling any of the option teams. I think it's not a good move. But if you're going to do it early, do it with the season opener so you can prepare for it. And then also that gives you time for your defensive linemen to recover from their injuries following, being cut block on the knees and the ankles. So I disagree every time they go ahead and schedule an option team.
Then we also had the JT Barrett first start in Annapolis, right?
No, it was in Baltimore.
No, Baltimore. Okay.
At the Ravens Stadium. And that was a really fun Fun game. I mean, it was a tough game for Ohio State to watch. It was either tied or they were behind at halftime, and then they pulled ahead in the second half and won 34-17. And Tony's right about the toll of playing Navy, because the next week they lost at home to Virginia Tech 35-21, and then got the ship corrected, and then went on from there to roll the rest of the way to the national championship there in 2014. But that was a memorable game out there in Baltimore. Navy was able to exploit some things with the Ohio State defense, and for at least a half or part of 2.5 quarters was right there with Ohio State neck and neck. So that was an interesting game to say the least.
I will also say that trip was the first time I ever had paella, and it was awesome. Like some little strip center in Baltimore, and it was good. So I recommend it. I don't know what the name of the place was. I'm sure all places in Baltimore are great.
I was sick as a dog and ended up going to the Baltimore Orioles game later that same night. So it was. I survived enough to be able to go to the Baltimore Orioles game that night.
I'm just looking at the box score. Keenan Reynolds, the quarterback for Navy that day, 2 of 4 passing for 20 yards.
Yep.
But they rushed for 370.
That's crazy.
Yeah, you would just think, okay, we got all these athletes and all this muscle. We just line up at the line and just stuff it, and they can't throw. This is easy. No, it doesn't work out that way. And they do the same thing every time. They're either going to give it to the fullback, quarterback's going to keep it, or he's going to pitch it.
It requires such discipline. It's ridiculous.
That reminds me of the Army 99-yard drive. They did lose 38-7 in Columbus, but I believe there was a 99-yard drive that took up the entirety of the third quarter. Took like 14 minutes and 40 seconds.
Yeah.
One last thing on that 2014 game. Tyvis Powell, safety, led the Buckeyes with 13 tackles. And that's never a good thing when your safety has 13 tackles against the option team. Because a lot of those are dragging them down from like 8, after 8 or 9 yards and another first down.
And one last note on Navy, some of us old timers will go back to the 1981 Liberty Bowl. An Ohio State team that tied for the Big Ten championship was relegated to Memphis for like a 45-degree night on a Thursday night, December 29th kind of deal. And Art Schlechter and company pulled it out in his final game at Ohio State, 31-28. So that wasn't an easy task either. Doreen, thank you so much for being here and being a member at the Voice of College Football. Thank you, Mark. Your platform is for all fans. Appreciate that tremendously. Go Bucks. Love Tony as well. And Steve.
I'm the throw-in.
You're the Mike Conley to my Greg Oden.
That's it.
Steve, you can't get all the accolades all the time.
Yeah.
No. What would you do with it? Yeah.
You can't always be the headliner. All right, so that's the scheduling news, courtesy Tony and Navy and Youngstown State. Who knows? Jim Tressel might be the governor by then.
You know what? Would that be his second? Is he finishing out his first term at that point? I don't.
Probably. Well, no, I don't believe so. A 4-year term. He would still be. All right. Did anything come out of last weekend or anything that's been announced about camps this week that has caught your eye?
Steve, I don't know if you have any names on camps. I don't know that. I think maybe Brady Edmonds, the quarterback commit, is planning to be around a little bit this week. That was the plan, but these plans change. In terms of the official visitors, the 3 big guys, the big names last week were 5-star tackle, offensive tackle Felix Ojo, running back Savion Hyder, and linebacker Xavier Griffin. The official visits all went well. I'm not expecting Ohio State to land any of the 3, just because there's going to be some very stiff competition. And, You're dealing with a Texas kid, a Virginia kid, and a Georgia kid, and the entire nation wants them, and so does their local powers as well. So they're going to give it their all. But if there was an over under, and I'd set it the over under as a 0.5, I'd probably take the under right now.
Yeah, I mean, I heard good things about one player from New Jersey, Drew Wafel, a defensive end that he really likes Ohio State a lot. But the other side of that is he's going to make a visit to Penn State this coming week, and Penn State is really pushing him hard as well. I guess he had a very good rapport with Matt Patricia, the new defensive coordinator, so that was good. But
his brother's at Penn State as well, by the way.
What's that? His brother is at Penn State?
Yeah, he transferred over there from Michigan.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. The important thing is getting guys on campus. I'm still working on building my camp list. Going to text my people today and say who should I be looking out for. So yeah, I'll be there. I know Tony will be there as well, and a lot of the other websites, and some of our friends will be there, no doubt, covering all the proceedings.
And then this weekend, the official visits, running back favorite Aki from Ohio. They kind of need to get him and lock him in and get him committed soon, so that they can at least have that one, and then start working on even more on Savion Hyder and Derek Cooper as the other two guys that they're really targeting. Jet Washington, like 6'4", 6'5" safety from Bishop Gorman, is supposed to be visiting. So we'll see what Matt Guerreri can do there, and Tim Walton can do there. But it's a smaller weekend than last week, so they can maybe have a more focused attack. We'll see.
Yeah, Emmanuel Ruffin is another one from Alabama. He's ranked number 117 nationally, and he's the number 19 defensive lineman, interior defensive lineman in the country, 6'4", 290. It would be a huge coup if they were able to get him out of Alabama, obviously, and they need defensive tackle help. So that would be huge. And on Monday, they have a guy, Ernest Rankins, who is similarly ranked, 6'6", 285 pounds, from Decatur, Georgia, Southwest DeKalb High School, number 111 nationally, number 17 interior defensive lineman. So two guys from the heart of SEC country, Alabama and Georgia, coming in over the next several days, and we'll see if they're able to get him. They have 3 camp dates and a 7-on-7 tournament, I think, next week. So this week they're kind of easing into it with the one camp day on Thursday, and then next week they're going full bore. So all of us are going to have to get in shape to cover all these camps. That's for sure.
So while we have Doreen's comment on the screen, we might as well go this route and remind everyone, hey, we're keeping score against Michigan, and it's not going too well. So completely unlike the series against Michigan, where Michigan got the big head start and was playing football almost before Ohio State was a university, and got the big lead. It went the other way here at the Voice of College Football. So the Ohio State channel got the 1-year head start, something in that range, and many more subscribers, largely thanks to these two guys. And Michigan has overrun the Buckeyes channel here. These are not updated numbers. I will tend to that at some point. But 11,000 for the Michigan channel, and just over 9,100 here at Ohio State. And many, many more members. I don't know what our members count here is, maybe 8 to 10, and about 150 or something on the Michigan channel. So as Urban Meyer once said, and Steve will correct me if I get the wording wrong, if they keep count in any way, then we want to win.
Yeah, if they're keeping score, we want to win. He also said, did not like that guy. He was just a guy. Did not like that guy. About somebody, I don't remember who.
I will say my true rival is Penn State shows, so I don't even consider Michigan a rival.
No.
Very nice. So if Tony doesn't, then I guess I've got to correct my thinking. Yakov, we did get your super chat. Here we go, taking us to the past for Maurice Clarett, Kijana Carter, Robert Smith. Who was the best high school running back? I'll give it one of those myself.
Oh, good Lord.
Now, I did not get to see, I don't think I saw any of them in high school. I went to it was going to be Maslin against, did Maurice go to Warren G. Harding? Is that?
Yes.
It was going to be Maslin against Warren G. Harding, and it was going to be Justin Zwick against Maurice Clarett in the state semifinals. But Cleveland St. Ignatius beat Warren G. Harding that year, so it ended up being like Anthony Gonzalez instead. So I didn't get to see him in high school, and then I didn't get to see him in the Army game because he was hurt or something like that, or he was already enrolled. But the way people talked about Robert Smith back in the day, and this is right when I just started getting into like recruiting, like he was all of these guys were national, but like Robert Smith was the number one running back in the nation, the way I recall it. And so much so that Ricky Powers, also from Ohio, was like maybe the number 2 running back. He's like, well, I can't go to Ohio State. I got to go to Michigan if I want to play. And then Kijana Carter, what would have gone to Ohio State, but somebody threw some rumors out there that John Cooper was looking to head to the Phoenix Cardinals. And so then he was like, well, I don't know if I feel good about that. And he went to Penn State. But I know the first time I ever saw Maurice Clarett playing, that was the best running back I'd ever seen.
There was also some rumor that a Penn State assistant coach may have been involved with somebody in Kijana's family, maybe his mom or something. I don't remember the exact whatever, or maybe I have my guy off, but Penn State swooped in and stole him. That's for sure. Kijana Carter, and they didn't win the national championship in 1994, but boy, oh boy, they were. If Nebraska was 1, they were 1A. So no doubt about it. There should have been a split championship probably that season, but that's such a tough one. Robert Smith was known as a sprinter, obviously, world-class speed, and that's what set him apart. Kijana Carter had everything. I mean, just speed and power. Very unfortunate when he got to the Bengals that he did not have a knee, unfortunately. And Clarett, I mean, he was tough as nails. That's kind of what I think about with him. And, kind of in and out of the lineup at times at Ohio State, and the worst enemy after that in terms of the problems off the field and the different agendas and initiatives and demons that caught up with him in the years that followed, unfortunately. So, yeah, I'm torn on this one. I guess I'll say Robert Smith. He was very prolific in his time at Euclid, put up huge numbers. Kijana Carter was special, though. Maurice Clarett was just so tough. I mean, that's kind of how I look at each of them. And Smith was more than just a speed guy, though, too. I mean, he ran like a gazelle, but he had moves, and he was special to watch, that's for sure. When they got him in the open field, it was a lot of fun.
I think the Kijana Carter was almost like the prototype of what you would want in a running back, because he could do everything. He had speed, he had quickness, and whereas like Robert Smith, you mentioned, like he's a long strider, he's a longer guy, maybe not as jump cutty as Kijana Carter or Maurice Clarett, but Clarett just couldn't stay healthy. But he was the best Ohio State running back that I ever saw, until maybe sophomore year. Beanie Wells was really lighting people up.
Yep.
And I was in school when Eddie George was winning the Heisman, so I'll side with that Clarett thing. But him taking over against Texas Tech and then Washington State, doing what he did in those 2 games, that was pretty special.
No doubt.
Yeah, I think we all remember the Texas Tech game, even if we weren't there. I'm guessing you guys will tell me it was like 100 degrees because it was an early season game. And obviously he put on a show. But I was trying to Maurice Clarett never impressed me. Let me qualify that. The results and taking it in week after week after week of what he was achieving and what he was doing impressed me. But to watch him on any particular run, it always looked like he was kind of stiff and the shoulders he just kind of ran like this. And like, he didn't appear to be very fast, but he was running past guys. Like he wasn't pretty to watch in my estimation.
He always had to make the first guy miss, and that was usually around the line of scrimmage or in the backfield. So I think that was impressive. But yeah, I mean, what are his wow plays? You know, it's usually when he's got a lane and not necessarily making a bunch of guys miss, but maybe a stiff arm here or there. So I understand that. It was just the productivity when he was healthy was there, other than the Miami game, which is, you know, you're playing against a whole bunch of NFL guys, and it was he also had no passing game around him, really, you know, with what Ohio State had. But I understand what you're saying completely.
Yeah, just aesthetically, he is not in my wheelhouse of like gifted runners that you would want to watch. But Robert Smith's on the other end of the spectrum in my book, from, again, just that standpoint that you really have to be a football fan to appreciate different running styles and nuances to runners. But with him, you could be a very novice football fan, and he's just like Eric Dickerson, OJ, Barry Sanders in terms of a style that looks different than anybody else that's running the football.
I hated Eric Dickerson because he was so good, and I was a Walter Payton fan, a Bears fan, but like I knew that he was the best that I had seen at that point, and then Barry Sanders came along, and he's still the best I've ever seen.
All right, folks, we appreciate you being here, and we certainly appreciate Steve and Tony showing up every week for us on Buckeyes Live. This is 320 shows now for us, so we're past the 6-year mark. So show your appreciation in any way possible. Steve has provided some alterations. Let's get that word correct. The alterations to Ohio Stadium. So let's check those out, Stephen. You can lead us on what's going on at the Horseshoe.
Yeah, Ohio State, excuse me, yesterday made announcements that they're going to put in some field level suites. That these are things that we've seen when we've gone on the road to Dallas, in particular, to the AT&T Stadium, the Cowboys Stadium. They have these kind of field level suites. I think Nebraska has a couple of them at their stadium, and these are going to be state of the art suites with a lounge area. Food, beverage options, all these things, and some outrageous price. Isn't it something like $6,000 a seat for the year? Is that right, Tony?
That's for the seats on top. That's for the seats on top of the suites. They have not put the prices of the suites themselves up yet.
Yeah, some outrageous amount of money. I mean, they used to charge $2,000 a year for the club seats on the west side. I don't know what that's up to now, but this is some outrageous amount of money. And one of the selling points, I mean, this is something like $800 a game, per person or something stupid. I mean, I don't know who has that kind of money to throw around. Not very many people, but I'm sure some people will do it, just to show everybody they can do it, I guess. But one of the selling points is you get to come down the ramp, the same ramp that the team comes down from the locker room. So by proxy, you're going to be rubbing shoulders with the players. Now, I know that the Redcoats are going to be very militant about, you can't go there, that kind of thing. But, stand back, whatever. But it'll be a nice experience, I guess, for those who get to see it. I don't know how great the vantage point will be from there. And unlike at AT&T Stadium, there's no big screen straight up in the air that you can actually watch the game on, because, the ones in Dallas, you're blocked by the benches. I guess there wouldn't be anybody standing directly in front of you. They'll make the photographers at that end probably kneel, I presume, or sit. and then that way the folks can see over them to see what's going on the field. But yeah, it's something, progress, I guess. People who go to games at Ohio Stadium complain that there's no bathrooms on C deck or a lack of bathrooms. Well, before we address any of that, we're going to put some field level suites that we really didn't need down there in the end zone to generate a bunch of money that to pay these players that we actually do need. So if more places to urinate on C deck help them raise $5 million, then they'd have more places to urinate on C deck. But, these suites will produce more revenue and give people a really, really bad vantage point of the game from my standpoint.
Why not just charge $10 to use a nice bathroom in C deck? Just charge the people, and then you can put some nice bathrooms in there. I know they're getting their private bathrooms for those suites and those seats, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
I think the bathrooms under C deck, there's just like some porta potties, basically, from my understanding.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't really gone up there a lot during games. I think in the renovation, they added a few bathrooms with plumbing, et cetera, as opposed to just I think there are some of those, but not a lot. Nowhere near enough to accommodate the number of people sitting up there, especially once the beer gets flowing. So a lot of people halftime, and a lot of people miss halftime in the third quarter having to go to the bathroom.
You mentioned right now already you have in terms of the photographers in the end zone and what the sight lines are going to be for the people in those suites. They're going to be terrible regardless, but there's a line where the people in the front row of the photographers in the front row kind of have to kneel, and then the guys behind them don't necessarily have to. But like we're in the end zone all the time. I'm never kneeling. Like, to think that now we would have to kneel because there are people behind us, you're crazy. Like, I got work to do, and I know that there's going to be some sort of a upset thing, but you can't have these field level suites and have any concern about seeing the game, because that's not what those suites are for. Because even the only time you're going to be able to see anything going on is when they're within like 30 yards of the end zone, and your perception is completely wasted watching the view from that angle, that far away, that flat. The you won't be able to see the other team because one team will be blocking your view. You're gonna have to be watching it on television inside your suite. I think maybe one solution would just be, not a solution, but it maybe would help those people if there's a larger scoreboard in the north end zone, which probably needs to happen anyway, since there's also competitions with the size of your scoreboards and the size of your trons or whatever. So that'll probably be something in the future. But yeah, these seats, those suites are not for people who want to watch the game. They're for the people who, like, I've got one of those suites. Do you watch the game there? Well, we watch it on television, or we go to we go to our seats wherever else they are. But yeah, don't know how much those are going to be. I think there's 9 suites that hold 12 people each. And then every seat on top of that is a $6,000 seat. So you're talking, $1,200 a game or something like that, or whatever it is when it's six or 7 or 8 games a season for that. But it does, those seats, those $6,000 seats, that does pay for access to the 1922 club, which is something they're opening inside the stadium in 2026, a little social club that you can get into and you can have access to. So that's one of the perks of those seats, aside from just being able to be at the game and cheer loudly for your Ohio State Buckeyes.
Yeah, it would seem to me that they are doing away with the storage underneath the south stands to put that stuff in there. That club is what it would seem to me, because I have no clue where that club would go if they keep that area, because that's the only open space underneath those stands. So, and that's where the photographers work as well, which is not a consideration at all for them. They'll displace them to somewhere else, I assume, but and displace all that storage to somewhere else, I assume. But the band is going to move from the southeast corner back to the northwest corner where they were for years, up until maybe 15 or 20 years ago, they moved them to the south end. And the students will be still in the south end, I presume, just shoved up a few rows or whatever to make room for all these club seats and whatever else. So, it's going to be a little bit different, but my guess is when you guys go down there in the fourth quarter, they are not going to let you stand in the end zone or in the end line. They're going to move you to one sideline or the other. There's nobody going to be standing in front of those people. I can't imagine how they would have anybody standing in front of people paying that much money to have those suites. So my guess is all media people in the end zone will be kneeling or sitting or whatever, or just stationed along the sideline where you can still stand on the sideline because the first row of the AA deck is raised up 10, 12 feet off the playing field.
Steve, let me ask you, all of the people that paid to be on the sidelines that are always there, will they, there's just going to be more people like the people that hang out on the sidelines that also hang out in the end zone. Now they're just all going to be relegated to the sidelines, which is going to make that even more of a mess. Which,
Yeah.
But in terms of the club, the 1922 club, I just looked, it's going to be on the east side of the stadium. We'll see.
It'll be a mess.
Goes on there. They will also.
But it'll be a very lucrative mess. So,
And then the band, I see Doreen talking about it. Like when I was in school, 30 years ago, the band was on the north side, and so were the students, and really the south stands. We never even talked about wanting to sit over there. Like that was just a bunch of cast-offs, and that was like alumni and fans were like the students and the band were all nestled on the north side, like kind of like my campus experience where I just stayed on the north side and I didn't really venture much into the south side because that was dangerous. I stayed on the north side, both in the stadium and on campus, and I thought it was fine. I don't know that this really impacts the environment because these seats are not good. And I have seen people saying, well, at least now the people that always yell at people to be down in front are now down in front. So they have nobody else to yell at. And then people behind them will be fine standing and cheering, but we'll see how it works. I know they've moved the band around. They've moved the students around at times because, well, these are premier seats and we can charge more money for these seats. So we're losing money by selling them to students and giving them to the band. So we'll see where things go now with that and how they've reconciled the losses now. Just maybe give students fewer tickets. I have no idea how they're going to handle, because again, I know this is college, but every ticket that goes to a student is money that is wasted, the way some people will look at it.
No doubt.
Well, those are the only losses that can be reconciled at Ohio State. The other ones cannot. We've got shows all over the place, folks, here on the Buckeyes channel at the Voice of College Football. I can't necessarily keep them straight, so forget the names of the shows, but the times are what matter. Monday night, Wednesday night with this world-famous Buckeye show, paying homage to Gus Johnson, I believe. And then we've got the Thursday night show. So those are ones that I'm not involved in, so they are automatically could be better. There you go. Monday, Wednesday, Thursday nights around 7:30, 8 o'clock Eastern time, which leads us to, Tony, Buckeye Weekly. When's your next podcast coming out?
Well, co-host Tom is on vacation, so right now I'm either going to do a show by myself or find something else to do. And so nothing this week so far just yet. So thanks for asking, Mark. I'm being lazy. Thanks for pointing it out. Appreciate it. Always appreciate that, Mark. Great job.
I was hoping we were headed there to expose your laziness. Needed to be out there. Steve, what's going on with you? Tony's doing nothing, so you got to pick up the slack here.
Yeah, what can I say? I'm going to be doing dual duty tomorrow. There's a football camp and also the basketball team camp tomorrow with a few prospects. We'll be over at the Schottenstein Center, so I'll kind of be going back and forth tomorrow and covering a little bit of both. And I will agree with Tony. I scrambled so hard to finish the month of May in the right regard that I kind of, hit the wall Sunday and didn't do much of anything. And Monday was kind of a crappy day and Tuesday wasn't much better. So today I'm finally kind of getting into the swing of things for the month of June. So, we'll see what we can conjure up. I really did. It's unfortunate to write about, legends like Jim Marshall only when they've passed, because there are so many great stories and lessons that you can learn from reading about, these great people from the 50s, 60s, 70s. And unfortunately, we only talk about them when they pass, but his was definitely an uncommon story. And from Columbus East High School to the NFL and the Super Bowl was multiple Super Bowls was really a remarkable story. So I invite people to check out what I was able to write about him. And I shared some of the comments of his former teammates and coaches who love the guy. So that'll just give you, a little bit of warm inside to know that Ohio State didn't just begin producing great people this past year. It's something that's been going on for decades.
Absolutely. And it appears as though, based on the camp schedule, and then you'll stare at July 4th and right into Big Ten Media Days, and then it just doesn't stop.
Yeah, it's crazy.
All right, Steve, we appreciate you. Tony, we appreciate you guys showing up here to deliver Buckeye Talk. And again, please hit the like button on the way out. Subscribe here at the Voice of College Football. And we hope to make it back for number 321 next week, folks. We'll see you then.